I think it's fair to say that Sea of Thieves is a fairly casual game. From the simplicity of its mechanics to the general pace of the gameplay, you can, for all intents and purposes, beat the game by becoming a pirate legend without ever losing a drop of sweat. But what if that changed? What if every time your character dies, you had to delete them? Every skeleton, every volcano, and every PvP encounter suddenly becomes a lot more dangerous. And after getting that sort of thrilling experience in hardcore classic WoW, I decided to try and do the same thing in Sea of Thieves. We are going to create a brand new character on a brand new account to see how far I can get in my attempt of becoming a pirate legend without dying. And that in just 100 days, which equals 40 hours. Am I going to be able to overcome the odds and stand proud at the end of the challenge, or is this casual player trying to bite off more than he can chew? Well, there's only one way to find out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sea of Thieves Hardcore. After skipping the tutorial and waking up on the high seas on day 1, we were ready to get the challenge started. Well, not until spending our 50,000 gold login bonus, of course, because part of this challenge is that I start with absolutely nothing, and that, my friends, also counts for my boat. What, you thought I just get to start with a free ship? Sounds like communism to me. Though there's one thing that is free and not communism, this 21% sale on the entire website over on Gamersupps.gg/Cliff. That's right, if you've been eyeing literally any product from Gamersupps, like my personal favorite Blowhole Blast caffeine free, now is the time to get it, because from the 21st through to the 28th of February 2025, you can save 21% on your entire order simply by using code CLIFF at checkout or going to Gamersupps.gg/Cliff. Bookmarks are always appreciated because every time you use my link to buy something, I get a direct kickback, meaning you can get awesome products and support my channel in the process. Anyway, here's the problem with me getting a ship. In order to be able to set sail, my first course of action was making 250,000 gold to afford a sloop. So my prime directive was swimming from island to island in hopes of stumbling upon a rowboat to get me started. Naturally, you can't be swimming long distances on the Sea of Thieves without a bunch of sea puppies coming your way, but thankfully I filled my pockets with a bunch of food from the outpost before leaving. But if you thought this was the only thing I had to worry about on day 1, you'd be mistaken, because not only was there a player-controlled burning blade suspiciously close to my current location, I also spotted a brigantine zooming right past me as they tried to fight it. My neck of the woods was anything but safe, so I decided to swim in the opposite direction of their little squabble. Though it was only fitting that I was reminded of something Flameheart told me a lot after seeing his burning vessel, because my supplies really were dwindling. Please leave me alone. Bro, it was a joke! Wrong food. Come on, man. No! That's the second bite. Oh, there's pistol skeletons! Please tell me there's ammo on this island. I need ammo so desperately. I got poisoned as well? Truly, I was currently experiencing the entire breadth of PvE annoyances that Rare could possibly throw at me. My saving grace was that pistol skeletons can drop ammo pouches, and even though I didn't have a rowboat to carry any treasure, the local skeleton captain's map might still lead me to something useful, like a supply crate. PvP crate would be great. Oh! No! 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 Oh my god! I just saw the dude with the sword come out. Oh, my poor heart. I definitely saw my, albeit very short, life flash in front of my eyes as I envisioned that sword skeleton slash right into the stronghold gunpowder keg I dug up. So yeah, no supply crate for me. Alas, complaining was not gonna get me a rowboat, so I had no choice but to continue swimming into day 2. Though finding a magic rock that granted me the ability to levitate certainly did lift my spirits. And finally, Thieves Haven ended up being my savior as I found not only a rowboat, but one that came bundled with a bunch of supplies. This would be my humble vessel moving forward, as I had to find a way to collect 250,000 gold worth of treasure to replace this with a proper sloop. I decided to head on over to Old Brinestone Fortress to secure loot as well as food for my journey ahead, though it is worth mentioning that AI does open fire upon cannon rowboats, so to make sure I don't get yeeted back to the login screen, I had to row into its dead angle. One phantom eviction later, and I was ready to collect my goodies. Even the game was like underwhelmed with the amount of loot. Yeah, I can't say that this is the best location to make money, but since I needed additional supplies anyway, you know, might as well collect the treasure. By day 3, I also realized that my day counter covered my gold counter, so in my infinite wisdom, I decided to move it. Now, if you want a chunk of change and that fast, let me introduce you to skeleton camps. Not only can they spawn skeleton captains that you can defeat for a treasure map, but when venturing below ground, you can complete a puzzle to unlock a certain piece of loot. It can take you a little bit, especially if you have never done it before, but doing this without a ship is actually actually more safe because nobody knows that you're there, and the Orb of Secrets you can unlock upon completion sells for a whopping 20,000 gold pieces. It was only natural that I would want to collect more of these, but for now, I decided to cut my farming agenda short after emptying a shipwreck because it was almost time for Gold Rush Hour. Now here's the thing, part of the rules of this challenge is to not use any multipliers on reputation like Community Weekend or Golden Glory. But since Gold Rush does not affect reputation and happens twice every day, I decided to let that one slide. By the way, you can find the entire rule set down in the description below. All you have to know is that I had sold every item I found by day 4, with about 72,000 gold ending up in my pocket and my 3 main companies landing at level 6, 5 and 5 respectively, which means we had a long way to go. And where were we going? To a treasury, of course. Doing these is safer without a boat for the same reasons I highlighted at the skeleton camp. It really sucks having to leave your ship unattended, especially at these POIs where everyone knows you are not going to see them coming. Honestly, I thought I was making decent progress until I found out that the voices in my head were betting against me. That's Gamba? Hold up, what are you guys gambling? How long will this pirate last? Wow. Okay, dude, what are the options? 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 plus? 10k on him dying from lightning strike at day 11? Bruh. With an audience like that, you certainly don't need enemies, but they did have a point. If I wanted to complete this challenge, I needed to lock in. So for the next few days, I hard sent every money-making opportunity in my vicinity. From skeleton camps to sea forts to more skeleton camps. Yeah, I was doing the sea forts to kill some time for the camp to reset. I killed every captain, dug up every chest, picked up every message in a bottle, and destroyed every mermaid statue in my wake. This rowboat was getting me all across the shores of plenty with steel determination, so that by day 13 I had finally collected the coin to buy a sloop. Now you might think that this means the difficult part of the challenge is over, but boy oh boy do I have news for you, because ladies and gentlemen, we are just getting started. My next session started off on a bit of a weird note. I had just acquired my brand new sloop, and what better way to ring in the literal maiden voyage than by having some swabbies run up on you. Naturally, any amount of retaliation made them reconsider their course of action, and whilst chasing them down could have been fun, I remembered that I was on a bit of a challenge. Now my plan was to start off working towards PL by leveling up the Order of Souls, but unfortunately for me, I was not high level enough to do the quests that I sought out to complete, those being the ones in the Devil's Roar. And some of you might be wondering, why? Well, I was desperate for money. Having a ship does not mean that I'm in the green, because you see, as per the rules, if my boat was to sink, I would not get to use it again until I bought a new one. The Devil's Roar just kind of made sense for this, because the items here are more valuable, the environment kills the skeletons for you, and most PvP addicted pirates stay the heck away from here. Meaning I only had to deal with the existential dread-inducing prospect of getting one-shot by a volcano. Very cool. But I am getting ahead of myself, because it wasn't volcanoes I had to deal with first, it was ironically other players. These lads had just been bombarded by some fiery meatballs themselves, and who am I to not add to their misery now that the rain had ended? Unfortunately for me, it's been a few months since I played Sea of Thieves, and let's just say that my PvP skills were not exactly up to par, allowing them to get away. Or at least so I thought. Did they dive? Did they actually just immediately dive away from me? That they didn't deer past me, because apparently they had sunk. Now I wish I could tell you that collecting their stuff was a simple affair, but of course that would be too easy, so say hi to Megan the Megalodon and also say hi to the boat that just sank. Uh-oh, they're coming back. Alright, let's not stick around then, huh? We gotta get close to an island. I don't think they're happy about me taking their stuff. It didn't strike me as particularly, like, boarding heavy, but if they do... Excuse me! And they got some goodies! Let's go, okay. Yeah, so as it turned out, I had just accidentally robbed a duo of fishermen. Listen, this was recorded before the Hunter's Call season, so I don't know how valuable these fish are to you guys today, but at the time, this was a massive deal. Massive enough for these guys risking their lives trying to get it back. It was quite ironic to see how quickly they sank the first time, and now I was absolutely pelting their ship and they were still afloat. At some point, I made the decision that selling the contraband was more important than teaching these guys a lesson. Said lesson being, don't get hit by volcanoes, I guess? I wanted to go for a drive-by sale of the fish, but ironically, another volcano was getting off right next to the sea post, so I swiftly abandoned that idea. In essence, if I wanted to not only make this money, but any money at all, I had no choice but to get rid of them. Cue sequence of me almost getting one board, but all was well, because eventually, I came out on top. Selling the fish got me not only over 30,000 gold, but also 10 whole levels in the Hunter's Call. More importantly though, this was a massive boost to my morale. Obviously, PvP is going to be the most dangerous aspect aspect of this challenge, so anytime I can win a fight is a massive deal to me. With that said, I do have some reputation to grind out. I spent the next couple of days completing Order of Souls voyages until the roar had completely emptied me out of my food supplies, so I went to a nearby seaford in order to remedy that. Also, allow me to show you why I actually prefer doing skeleton camps on a rowboat over using my actual ship, because this dude had absolutely no clue what was happening when I began laying into his vessel. Well, all his stuff was mine now. It did feel like I was taking a massive risk doing these quests in the roar, but realistically, if I die early on in the challenge, it would hurt a lot less than dying towards the end of it. Though that doesn't mean that moments like these didn't make me crap my pants. Whoa! Excuse me? Oh god! Oh my god, okay. Whoa! Okay, dude! The firing squad is here. The risk I took was calculated, but boy am I bad at math. Uh-oh. Nope, this is not a good... Oh, and the water's boiling, and my ship has drifted away. Ow. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! The horsemen of the Diapocalypse. I think you get the point. The Devil's Roar is very dangerous, so much so that when I logged back in on day 24, I decided to try and avoid it. Obviously, I was keeping a close eye on the map for any potential troublemakers of the Reaper variety, but I wanted to know if I could get some decent reputation even out in the shores of plenty. At that stage, my levels amounted to 12, 7, and 17 respectively. The good news was that I could almost afford another ship, which would be one less thing to worry about should I sink. I diligently collected treasure in anticipation of the next gold rush just to make sure I have a decent amount of money to work with, and things were going well until disaster struck. Uh-oh. Oh no. My game crashed. Oh no, dude. Oh, come on. Yep, as I was sailing full speed towards an outpost ready to sell my treasure, the game crashed. And don't ask me why, but for some reason Sarge took absolute ages to load on this patch, even when running it off of an SSD, so naturally, by the time I reconnected to the server, my boat was gone. The literal only saving grace was that my rowboat had survived in the storm and I could use it to salvage the loot. I did manage to get it back to the outpost before Gold Rush was over, but without an emissary flag, my reputation gains were rather modest. At least I could afford a new boat by the end of that, so time to blow my entire stockpile of money on another vessel, which I lost due to no fault of my own. But hey, that's hardcore Sea of Thieves for you. And as if that wasn't bad enough, I began day 28 by getting lightning struck through the deck of my boat. Speak of adding insult to injury, but the grind continues. I just missed out on a ton of reputation due to the unfortunate loss of my emissary flag and the boat that was attached to it. I decided to, upon hitting rank 5, take on the emissary quest in the Devil's Roar, where one of the skulls I just earned got meshed under the terrain. I'm telling you guys, this really was not my day. I had a lot of reputation to make up, and if I continue at this pace, I'm not gonna make it to Pirate Legend by day 100. Needless to say that when I saw the opportunity to blow off some steam on an unsuspecting sloop in the Roar, I took it. Bro tried to hit me with a harpoon gun throwing knife combo. The good news is that I ended off that session on day 36 with enough money in my pocket to afford another boat if it came to that. But seriously, I needed to get out of the Roar before I lost my neck to a volcano. But that doesn't mean that things were gonna get any less dangerous. With the clock ticking, I could not really afford to play it entirely safe. So when I was offered the golden opportunity of being on a server that not only had an active Fort of the Damned, but also a contested Skull Fort right next to me, I had to take it. This was a massive deal because as per the rules, I was not allowed to use any diving voyages. Meaning, whatever server I am on is whatever server I am on, whether it is completely dead or absolutely infested with PvP Reapers. But just for now, I decided to seize the opportunity and try to be the aggressor. Any sort of keg play is obviously dangerous when you only have one life, so instead of risking me running into a blunderbomb trap, I decided to harpoon the keg onto the vessel once I was on board. And from there, all I had to do was wait for him to complete the fort, blow up the keg, and take him out. I'm not sure if he was on that Xbox loading time or if he was also playing hardcore, but bro did not come back when I was watching his vessel fill up with water. Yeah, I did feel like a bit of a bully at that point. Anyway, all I had to do now was get my own boat over to the fort so that I could collect my loot. Except, I was the one about to be bullied. Hey, what? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Why are you playing this music? Bro, why? Why? I'm at an island! Go away! You know, I don't usually play with music turned on so I can insert my own when making these videos, but in this case, I was really glad I made an exception for this challenge, ignoring how unfathomably unlucky it was that the Burning Blade not only spawned immediately after the Skull Fort was completed, but completely at random decided to come right towards me. I was absolutely stressing the hell out about dealing with it. Using my own ship's cannons was very dangerous because that thing has a lot of firepower and all it takes is a single lucky one ball to end my run. So whenever I was certain my boat would not sink, I made a run for the stationary fortress cannons, and in due time, it was defeated. But all that stress would end up being worth it, because once I was allowed to open the vault of the fortress, I found out that this was an Order of Souls raid. Incidentally, the exact faction I was currently leveling up. I could save on time moving fewer higher value pieces of loot than if this was a naturally spawning Skull Fort, and I would get extra money plus reputation for every single item collected. Speaking of which, of course I did not let the Burning Blade loot go to waste. On day 39, I could sell my treasure at rank 5 and claim my emissary quest for even more rewards, and it took me until day 42 to complete all these quests. At this stage, I have good news and I have bad news. Good news is that I had more than enough money to replace my boat 2 times over if things go awry. The bad news was that we were approaching the halfway point of the challenge and my highest faction was only level 34. Things needed to change, and that fast. Now, there was somebody stacking the Fort of the Damned for, by now, literal days, but honestly, I was not confident in my ability to take somebody out without dying myself who has the guts to stack FOTD, so I begrudgingly continued my grind as I tried to get a new emissary flag to rank 5 for a fresh new batch of emissary quests. Just that somebody out there took offense to my presence. I got attacked by a brigantine as I was hunting down skeletons. So far, I only had to contend with other sloops, 2 players at best, but now I was stuck in a 3v1, and the worst part, since their ship is faster than mine, running away was not an option either. What the? For those of you not paying attention to my HP, let me rewind and show you just how close that harpoon play was to ending my whole career. Thankfully, their ship management skills were not as good as the harpooning skills, because once they managed to anchor my boat, their own vessel zipped right past me using its warp speed. Truly, helming was not their strong suit, and I was about to learn just how right I was in that assessment. Oh my god! If those are the people that end my run, I'm gonna be so mad, dude. In a perhaps anticlimactic turn of events, them hitting an island at full speed allowed me to take cover behind the Phantom Fleet, after which they lost track of me. Of all the times that I was close to perishing this challenge, that was perhaps the closest one. But one thing was apparent: I was not going to be able to get to Pirate Legend in time without taking some risk. Clearly, being the aggressor has paid off for me more than spending days running away from boats that have no treasure. And honestly, I can't keep retreating into the Devil's Roar every time things get tough. As much as the loot being more valuable helps, I also lost a lot of time to just having to wait out volcano eruptions, not to mention the myriad of near-death experiences. Oh my god. Oh! I mean, I was reliably winning my sloop 1v1s, but none of that mattered if the loot I get as a result does not justify the time spent. With my Order of Souls reputation at level 46, I figured I would be able to get the remaining 4 levels passively, just from collecting skulls I come across randomly. The one saving grace was that by day 56, I had amassed a small fortune. I decided to use my vast riches to sink my ship intentionally and replace it with a Burning Blade. But obviously, in order to be able to do that, I needed to wait for the right opportunity. So whilst waiting for Burning Blade to spawn, I began grinding out Gold Hoarder reputation under their emissary flag. I got extremely lucky because not only did I get a Megalodon to spawn on me, just as I defeated it, a skeleton ship also joined to drop by. These emergent encounters give you a huge boost to your emissary level, so when I found another skelly ship out in the world, I figured I could use it to fast track my way to rank 5. It was emissary quest time, baby, but not only that, my streak of luck continued as I found more and more messages and bottles that mostly led me to the exact same island, Ashen Reaches. I cannot begin to explain how invigorating this was, because being on day 59 with only 1 out of 3 factions even within striking distance of level 50 made me doubt of the feasibility of reaching my goal, but this treasure was going to be worth a lot of reputation. Day 61 was when I would finally be able to put my plan into motion, and uncapped and Burning Blade was ripe for the taking. All I had to do was sink it and another sloop trying to do the same thing. Or not? I mean, okay, there's no rule that says I have to sink every boat on sight. I'm just not allowed to be in an alliance, and strategically it made more sense to deal with the Burning Blade first before doing anything about that sloop. Though as much as he said he wanted to help me, help seems to be a bit of a relative term. How do they intend to deal damage? What kinds of naval maneuvers are bros trying to do? You're on the wrong cannon, buddy! What? Bro! Yeah, this felt a lot like giving your younger cousin the second controller in a single-player video game without telling them that it wasn't plugged in. I had left my ship in a spin trying to do my darndest to keep the skeletons off the cannons because I had expected him to want to fire shots of his own, but rather he decided to abandon his ship as well. So I did the only reasonable thing, boarded his vessel to fire one singular cannon shot before hopping back on the burning blade and sighing in frustration over how that was all it took to finish the job. And in a perfect conclusion to my plan, his boat sank mere moments after the burning blade was defeated, meaning he was of no use to me any longer. Obviously, taking over the burning blade meant that I had to pay 250,000 gold out of my pocket in order to buy another ship, because your own vessel sinks as you claim this one as your own. But money was of no concern to me right now, it was reputation. Oh, and this guy decided to come back after I had taken control of this man of war. the Reaper PJs really saw that.
I'm a friend, okay? I don't will kill you.
I don't think he understands what's happening, man.
I don't will hurt you.
Unfortunately for him, I did. Now I cannot overestimate how annoying it was to have to deal with this random sloop constantly coming back like a stupid housefly that gets just close enough to aggravate you, but not so close that you could slap it. But when I did finally get my hands on him, I think he started to understand that I did not, in fact, want to be friends, eventually leading to his retreat. Meaning I could finally farm some reputation, right? I could, like, actually progress my challenge? Yeah, right, because the very next day, we already had another challenger. Oh, come on. Are you for real right now? I'm trying to supply up over here. Now, if I was still on my sloop, this would certainly be grounds for panic, but because I had just completed a skeleton camp, I'd replenished all of my skeleton minions, which is to say that I was ready to rumble. And I swear, hitting a galleon with an ashen roar never stops being satisfying. Now, these guys have shown me about as much resistance as I do when somebody offers me an ice cream sandwich, but hey, remember when I said that it was really annoying to deal with a fly that keeps coming back? Yeah, what about a hornet instead? Having music turned on ended up being really clutch, because apparently the Burning Blade plays combat music every time another ship comes within range, alerting me to the return of the galleon. I was seeing a bit of a pattern when it comes to crews manning large vessels and their inability to control them, but having to fight against 4 pirates even when on the Burning Blade was definitely going to be a lethal proposition. Now, because a galleon has a lot of cannons and players, they actually succeeded in slowly chipping away at my skeleton crew. A ship is only as powerful as the people that control it, and without my bony boys helping me out, it was only a matter of time until I sank. So in an absolutely massive brain play, I decided to leave my remaining skeletons alone on the ship whilst going out to clear another skeleton camp. Thankfully, if you are in control of a burning blade, you do not have to find any AI at the end of the puzzle, and upon completion, all of my skellies were back in business. But that alone was not going to allow me to win. I had to find a way to not only sink their ship again, but also break their morale to the point where they wouldn't want to come back. A decisive victory, one so overwhelming that they see no chance to come out on top. But far from a decisive victory, this fight was a war of attrition. We exchanged cannon barrages for days, and their boarding attempts became more and more ferocious. It took every fiber of my being just to repel their attacks, and as much as the supply of cannons and planks was growing thin, so was my supply of food and skeletons. I decided to go for a risky play, jump off of my ship onto theirs with an entourage of skeletons to keep them distracted, so that I could beeline it straight to their anchor. With them being a sitting duck, all I had to do now was return to the Burning Blade and give my crew an angle to finish the job. An opportunity I saw when a cannon shot of mine took out an opposing pirate, signaling that this was the time to drive their final nail in the coffin. But this was no simple task. Not only did I need to fight their entire crew, I needed to stop them from bucketing or repairing the ship, all the while making sure I do not lose my own neck. But I was delivering an absolute clinic. None of them were able to deal with my presence, and after taking a gander at their barrels just to find all of them completely empty, I felt like a towering giant with a victory in my grasp. But you know what they say, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. No! No! He spawned behind me and I got sword tornadoed. After 65 in-game days, 26 real-life hours of grinding, my character had perished. And I mean, what do you do after wasting so much time and still not completing the challenge? I feel like there really is only one path to move forward, and that's to go again. That's right, nerds, immediately after losing, I deleted my character and made a new one to start all over again. And you know why? Because I'm addicted to the hardcore format. So if you enjoy this type of content, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below on whether or not you want me to attempt this again. And if you you think this is a cool format, definitely bug your favorite streamer to give it a shot as well. Or heck, try it for yourself. But if you prefer watching others play challenges over doing them yourself, what about you check out my video on how I unlock the coveted skeleton PvP curse. If you want to up your own PvP skills, that one's gonna have a bunch of useful tips for you, and you can find the card on screen right now. But until then, thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you guys have a day filled with the riches on the sea, and until next time, peace.